So here's an example of a bishop clogging the file. So you'll notice that this file is open. There's not even a piece on it, nothing. So the bishop has two ways to clog the file. This is the first way, which is not very good. The knight comes here, and now there's two attacks on it. That's not a good example of clogging the file. However, watch this move. First, we check the king, so he has to get out of check. Then we move here with an attack on the knight, and we're pinning the knight to the rook. And we're clogging the file. This is a very effective use of clogging the file. You'll also notice that even if this move was good, the black rook controls, or well, the rooks control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of 6 different squares, okay? Now, taking right here would not be a good idea, but it is a square that you could move to, and sometimes sacrificing a piece is good. So sometimes moves like that are okay, but we're going to count it anyway. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. However, if we do this check and then go there, now the rook controls 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a better way to clog the file because it lowers the amount of pieces or the amount of squares that black can control on the d file. So here we go. They defend their knight from capture. This move is trying to stop the knight from coming forward. You'll notice that if this b pawn were gone, then both of these squares would be considered outposts, and this one would be best because it would be in the middle, or kind of towards the middle of the board, where the knight would be able to move to 8 different locations. Let's see, right here, it would be able to move like this if it were on this c5 square. So anyway, they defend it with a threat to go there, but white says no way and does not allow it. Black tries to get white to trade off the pawn, which would open up a support point or an outpost. The pawn defends the b4 pawn here so that if there is a capture, we can recapture and continue to watch these two squares. However, instead, black decides to move knight to d6, and now we super clog the file. You'll notice that white is really happy in this position, and the last two moves we'll look at are these two. Basically, there are two threats here with only one defender. However, moving the rook over gives two defenders against the two attackers. And that's okay. When it's 2 versus 2, it means the attacker loses. Because if they take, they only have one supporter now. But basically, white will now have 2, in which case this happens. So that's a quick way to lose a chess game, is trading when you shouldn't. So here's a fourth reason to do to create an outpost, is to stop a pawn. So watch this. We're gonna play through a few moves here. So this pawn right here is very weak. It wants to move forward and attack more like this. However, we're controlling the square in front of it. So if it moves forward, we will just take it. And now you can see we have 3 pieces attacking this square. We have a pawn, a knight, and a rook. And the rook is also attacking the pawn. So the knight defends the pawn like this. We have now added the bishop to the square. We have 4 pieces attacking the square and a 5th pawn or not fifth pawn, but a fifth piece, which is a pawn, also attacks the square. So this pawn can definitely not move forward. So here we go. And there we are. We have a knight on an outpost supported by not just a pawn, but also a rook. A future pawn could also support it. And you can see that this pawn is not going anywhere. Eventually, this rook will be able to take that pawn. It might take a long time because we have a knight defending it, but if that knight has to run away and do something, then we can take that pawn. And lastly, I'm going to show you how to create an artificial outpost. Artificial means fake. And anytime in chess we use the word artificial, it means that there's something about the definition of the word you're learning about that is not true. So I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So here we go. So right here, black wants to put their knight right here and to create an outpost for their knight. However, the definition of an outpost is a square that is supported by a pawn but cannot be attacked by an opposing pawn. But right here, we can attack that pawn. So if you put your knight right there, you could theoretically just be attacked and that'll be it. However, we can create an artificial outpost like this. So here we're attacking the bishop. The bishop says, you're not taking me. So if black were to do something silly that was bad like this move, white would go here and it would force black to go backwards, and that would be very bad for black. However, black knows about creating artificial outposts. So right here, this pawn on a5 attacks the b4 square. So if they did go there, we would just take the pawn and our knight remains on the outpost. This is important because remember the definition of an outpost. It is a square where a pawn can support that square, but an opponent's pawn cannot attack it. So even though this pawn can come here and can attack it, it doesn't make any sense because we can eliminate the pawn immediately. So an artificial outpost is when technically they could attack this pawn or use their pawn to attack, but we have a reason they can't do that. So artificial outposts are just as good as outposts, and sometimes a little better because they're a little unexpected. The truest outpost in this position is actually this d4 square. It's supported by a pawn, none of the enemy pawns can attack it, and it would be a dream to get a piece in there. However, this knight would just trade off. So if we were able to get our knight somehow, one of our knights somehow to the square, their knight could just take it. So we have to be very careful. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this lecture on outposts, and you'll understand that when I'm in an outpost, I am trying to watch over Earth. When you have chess pieces on an outpost, your goal is to watch over certain parts of the position. Sometimes you're watching your opponent's pieces. Sometimes you're just trying to stop a rook from moving down a file. Sometimes it's because you want to have an invincible piece. Sometimes you're just stopping a pawn. There's all kinds of reasons to make an outpost. So as you play in your chess games, please look for outposts and point them out to each other. I'm signing off now. I have more work to do up here in outer space. I'll do another lecture in a couple of days, probably by next week. So have a good day, Space Cadets, and I'll see you later.